I started off talking about simulation theory in the last episode, but I realised I didn't explain it any further than that. So today I hope to be able to explain exactly what I mean by simulation theory. And like I was saying the other day, it's not high-powered. It doesn't require the knowledge of mathematics or an understanding of logic or anything like that. Well, maybe just a little bit of logic, but nothing too much. So we can start by saying that simulations have been around far longer than computers have. Simulations and the business of simulating reality has been around as long as human beings have, and maybe longer. Every single time we define what reality is, we're making a simulation. Every time we describe something or talk about something using words, we're creating a simulation. And even more to the point, every time we think about our situation so as the situation we're thinking about actually makes sense to us, actually creates a reality in our head that we can get to grips with, that we can grasp hold of. That's not a reality, that's a simulation. So for as long as we have been thinking, and as long as we have been talking about our thoughts, expounding upon our thoughts, we've been creating simulations. The key thing that distinguishes a simulation, whether it's semantic or cognitive, is that it defines reality. It's definite. It says what things are. It's nitty-gritty. It's this, but it's not that. Which is a function of Aristotelian logic. Aristotelian logic is based on the principle of the excluded middle, so that things are nailed down, so that when I say something like the cat is sitting on the mat, that excludes the possibility that the cat is not sitting on the mat. And if I say one, I can't be saying the other. And if I say the other, I can't be saying the one. You can't have them both at the same time. The cat can't be on the mat and off the mat at the same time in Aristotelian logic. So there's one end is or yes, and the other end is no. And it's either yes or no, there's no middle. The middle has been excluded. Now, the reason that's a simulation is because that particular formality absolutely doesn't exist in reality, not in the deeper reality. It's not a real principle. It's a convention we use to make sense of things. Now, it's understandable that until comparatively recently, we have understood that this is a real, absolutely fundamental principle, as fundamental as you can get, super fundamental. And the easiest way to see why this has appeared to us to be a principle, an absolute fundamental principle, is if you think in terms of location. So if I have an object, a pen, and I put it on the table, Aristotelian logic means it is where it is, but it ain't where it ain't. And it's certainly nowhere in between. So that if I've got a pencil or pen on the table, and the table is divided into squares, which seems somehow unlikely, but we'll go along with that. you can start guessing. So if all the squares are numbered, you can guess. Is this pen on square 1? And I'll say no. Is this pen on square 2? And I'll say no, until you get to the square where the pen is. And I'll say yes. Now the thing is, the answer to every time you ask the question, the answer has to be yes or no. It can't be in the middle. It can't be fuzzy. It can't be indeterminate, because when we're dealing on the macroscopic scale of objects we can relate to in everyday life, Aristotelian logic with regard to location seems to work every time. The pen is always going to be in one spot, and it's not going to be on any other spot. And so eventually, if you keep asking me questions, you will be able to pin it down, and that'll be it. We can shut the case then. Mystery over. So we infer from this that this is a property of deep reality, etc., etc. And that's nice for us because it's something to help us understand. It's an understandable thing about the universe in which we live, and that's good because we can navigate by it. We can hold on to it as a principle. Comparatively recently, we found that that principle only holds good on a macroscopic scale, and if we tune in to smaller and smaller scales till we get to the subatomic, we get to a kind of deeper level of reality where that doesn't hold good, and we can't pinpoint anything down. And that's why the model of saying everything is made out of particles and subatomic particles doesn't hold good, because when we rack down, as if we're on a microscope, racking down to get more and more resolution on tiny things, we get to a point where there are no particles. The entity that we're investigating isn't a particle anymore. I don't really know what it is, but it sometimes is described as a probability wave. But however we describe it, it's not a particle. And the reason for this is that Aristotelian logic doesn't work anymore. There's no more here versus there. The world isn't divided into neat checkerboard squares anymore. And that, we can say, with a lot of justification, if we wanted to go into it, which we won't just now, is the deeper level of reality. That's what everything comes out of. So the world of definite things and definite locations is, as the mystics have been saying for thousands of years, an apparition. It's a kind of show that the universe puts on. It's a very convincing show, but it is a show because the deeper level of stuff isn't partitioned. The deeper level of stuff is what physicists sometimes call a symmetrical situation. One place is as good as another, one description is as good as another. So no matter what you ask me, it'll be, that's as good as anything else. That's kind of like a maybe. Yeah, you could be right. It's neither yes nor no, it's just a big maybe, which is what Robert Anton Wilson calls maybe logic. Maybe logic doesn't tell us anything. Well, it tells us something, but it just tells us we can't know. We can't penetrate any deeper into the indeterminacy of reality, because reality could manifest as anything, or it might not want to manifest as anything, or it could be everything at once, or whatever. There's absolutely no limits on it, and that is the kernel of reality, the absolute nature of it, this kind of cosmic indeterminacy, which really means that things aren't partitioned in nice little compartments anymore. They're nice little compartments that exist in our thoughts, in our minds. And we love to put things in there. It's a kind of a bureaucratic, neurotic, obsessive nature of ours to want to categorize everything and say what it is and what it isn't and be definite about it. We love doing that. We have a kind of tendency to move into that territory and really get enjoyment out of doing that. But really, when we go into that area of wanting to do that, of wanting to nail everything down, we discover that that is actually would be characterized as a mental health condition, extreme neurosis, OCD. And that causes suffering because the nailed down, compartmentalized version of reality doesn't correspond to anything beyond our models. Therefore, we are disconnected from reality. And the most basic principle that I can think of right now is that being disconnected from reality is the root of all what we call mental health conditions, all forms of chronic suffering. We're trying to nail something down, but we can't. Or we try to nail something down, but reality itself is going against us, and so we're fighting and we're fighting and we're trying and trying, but we're getting to this point where we can't do it. We can't do what we want to do, what we really feel we need to do. We feel that when, and we can relate this to perfectionism, we feel that when we get everything to be what we want it to be, exactly what we want it to be, then that'll be great. All sorts of wonderful things will happen there. There'll be a bliss state that we will have cracked it. We will have got the answer. Everything will be brilliant. This is our assumption or our projection, and it leads us on to ruin, because the chasing after this perfection is the chasing after of something which is impossible. We invest an awful lot in it and we try very hard, but the harder we try, the more we're getting banged against a hard place, a rock, a wall, because what we're trying to do isn't possible. So really we're dashing ourselves against the rocks of impossibility, and we're covered in blood and bruises and lacerations and all that sort of stuff. But do we learn? No, we keep on dashing ourselves against the rocks because we're so convinced. We're so convinced that Aristotelian logic is a basic principle. We're totally convinced. You couldn't tell us otherwise. We just don't get it. Deep down, we don't want to get it. Now, having said this, I should really go back on myself and say, well, eventually we will get it. That's the one thing that we can say, is that reality isn't in any hurry. We can go on dashing ourselves to pieces against these rocks as long as we like, and reality is very happy for us to do this. I don't know why I'm using the word reality. I can't really think of anything else. Nature, we could say. But that much pain, and the point about the pain is that the more I fail, the more harder I try, and the more desperate I get, and the more violent I get, and the more I hurt myself, and the more I hurt myself, the more violent I get. So the pain goes up, in other words. And what I'm trying to say is that enough pain, enough intensity of pain, if you keep turning the dial up and it keeps happening, eventually we will learn. We're slow learners, put it like that. We will learn, but it is a very, very long drawn out and grueling process that we learn. But we all do learn in the end, kind of, even though we're very stubborn. And the reason we're very stubborn, super stubborn, and resistant to learning something which is quite simple, that there is no such thing as perfection. There is no such thing as the right set of compartments that we can put everything in and everything will be neatly wrapped up and nailed down forever and ever. The reason we are so slow to see this is because of fear. Like, fear is the only thing powerful enough to be responsible for this immense stubbornness, this immense resistance to learning. So there's this huge big thing called fear. And in our everyday experience of being obsessive or perfectionistic or striving to bring order where it's actually proving impossible because we're pushing that too far, it's impossible to obtain certainty beyond a certain point because we're pushing that too far. We don't experience the fear, we just experience that fear in inverted way. We experience the fear in terms of the belief, the concrete belief that it is possible to put things to right, to get things to achieve perfection, to achieve certainty. So the fear manifests itself firstly in the belief that it's possible to obtain perfection or certainty, however which way you want to look at it, and two, the intense motivation or drive to realize this, to put it into action and to achieve it. This can be related to our fetish about goals. A goal is a illusory or abstract definition of something, and we imagine that when we achieve it, bells will start ringing and it'll be like Christmas and everything will be really, really great. We're hypnotized by this idea that we can achieve something that's very specific and there's a specific way to do it. It might be difficult and tricky, but we are convinced it's possible to do it and that when we do it, it's going to be great. And so we're mad about achieving goals as if that is the answer to everything. As if one day I'll achieve a super goal and I'll be in nirvana, I'll be in paradise, everything will be so fantastic. I can't even begin to think to myself how fantastic it will be because I don't bother going into that, but I just know it's going to be super fantastic and that's all I know. So that fervent ideological attitude or fanatic attitude would be a better way to put it, in how great things are going to be when I nail everything down, is fear. We don't recognize it as fear because it's fear turned inside out. It's fear flipped over and presented to us by our mind as a way to escape the fear. So that when we relate to this, what's being presented to us as a way to escape the fear, that's hugely motivating for us because we want to escape the fear. Because that's the whole thing about fear. The whole thing about fear in a nutshell is that we want to escape it. Boy, do we want to escape it. We want to escape it real, real bad. And obviously, I don't need to go on and on and on because we all know that. So when I'm acting out of a state of fear, I want so badly to find the escape. Now, there isn't an escape. And that lies at the heart of the fear, the awareness that there is no escape. There is no escape. But the mind is presenting me with a possibility of escape within this hugely oversimplified model of reality. And I just have to do the thing, whatever the thing is, but it has to be done. It has to be done properly. And then, bingo, a good thing will happen. Now, I don't experience myself as struggling to escape the fear. Because if I did that, I'd know I was afraid, and that wouldn't be escaping the fear at all. So the mind turns it around. So I'm not escaping the fear. I'm trying to obtain a really good thing, an objectively good thing that exists independently, all of its own, as a thing, as a value, like a supremely great value. So when I'm in this goal-seeking modality, which we're all in, that goal-seeking modality, that's the default modality, looking for goals to achieve the whole time. But even if it's a crappy, stupid little goal, like the goal of putting a hat on, when you find a hat and you say, I'm going to make a goal of putting that hat on. And they say, yeah, I successfully achieved that goal. The thing is, even that stupid little goal will give me a little bit of euphoria because it stands for, represents, symbolizes in an unconscious way the big goal. So there's all these little goals and then there's a big goal, but the big goal is manifesting in all the little goals. It's as if every little goal I achieve brings me closer to the big goal. Now this big goal, the real big goal, is a super, super, super great value that is a real value, it's a tangible, actual value that exists out there in the objective universe, and I'm going to achieve it. And that's going to be great, because when I achieve a super great, objectively real and very marvelous goal, boy, does that feel great, because that's a really great thing. Only it's a whole heap of illusion, because the goal that I'm achieving really represents my escape from the reality of my fear, and that's an impossible thing, and therefore the goal is an impossible thing. So the goal keeps slipping out of my fingers. As a perfectionist, I can never get it perfect, but I get that tantalizing feeling that I almost did or almost can do. So I'll do it again and again and again and again, because I'm chasing the dragon, I'm chasing that hit, I'm chasing that feeling that I will be able to successfully escape from fear. So what this means is that in the conditioned world or conditioned reality in which we all live, everything is represented backwards. So all the things that we try to achieve and try to pull off, try to successfully attain, they're all just escapes from fear in lots and lots of different ways. Everything we do is an escape from fear in the way that I've just described. Everything. All we ever do is delude ourselves the whole time that we can escape from fear and pretend to ourselves that we are escaping from fear by doing absurd things. This doesn't mean that we can't have goals. I could be thirsty, I have a goal of finding some water, that's a really important goal, but I'm not psychologically projecting on it that this is significant and it's going to be a really great thing. It is a great thing to drink water when you're really thirsty, but that's a pragmatically great thing. It's not what fuels our obsession with goals. Our obsession with goals has got nothing to do with pragmatics, even though it often is masked by it or hides behind it. So what causes all the suffering is the fact that we don't see through this, and the fact that we keep on being fooled in this way. And we don't see, when we try to escape from fear, this isn't free volition. That's fear itself. That is, we're driven. We're driven. We are controlled by the fear. It's making us do everything. It's puppeting us. Even the things we think, they're controlled by fear. They're driven by fear. Only we're seeing everything backwards, so we don't see everything we do as being driven by this external mechanical deterministic force called fear. We see it as our free will. So I want to do that. That's my absolute, genuine, honest to God, free volition. I want to do this because it's a great thing, not I am being compelled to do this, and out of fear, which means I'm being controlled by fear. It's possible to be very, very afraid and observe that we are being controlled 100% by fear when something happens to provoke total terror. But then we just write that off. We certainly don't see that that's what's happening on a lower level, on a more disguised level, in everything we do. Doesn't sound like a particularly positive picture of life. Certainly nothing to get all kind of positive about, in the way we often like to get positive about things. But it's reality. Reality is a somber affair. It's not what we'd like to imagine it is, where everything's just easy and everything's going to be great. There's a darkness to it, there's a grimness to it, there's a somberness to it, and the more conscious we become, the more aware we become of the true nature of our predicament. This is not to say that everything is just predetermined and that we haven't got a chance and we're just machines. That isn't the case at all. Like Gurdjieff says, we are machines, but we're special machines. We're machines with a possibility of becoming not machines. And during our everyday conditioned life, there's little manifestations of us being not machines, doing non-machine like stuff. For example, creativity. Machines aren't creative. They can't be. The demiurge can only copy. The devil can only mimic God, as the medieval theologians used to say. But there is something else. There is creativity, which isn't coming out of fear. Compassion isn't coming out of fear. A sense of humour isn't coming out of fear. If you're really, really scared, you ain't cracking jokes and you ain't busting a gut laughing. That's a fact. Love isn't coming out of fear. What comes out of fear is total self-absorption, the narcissistic state.